You wouldn't download a car, would you? Anyone watching this video is way too intelligent to try something like that. Right? What if you covered your face in lemon juice first? Would that shield you from the prying eyes of the law? Would that make you invisible to the police? Now you might be thinking, why would you say that? What a preposterous thing to say. Where are you going with this? If you think laughing at goofy criminals and the dumb ways that they got caught sounds like a good time, then please, I implore you, get comfy, grab a little snack or something, and let's look at some dumb criminals together. I'm gonna take a little sippy of my tea. Oh, ooh. Okay. In 1709, Alexander Pope said, "A little knowledge is a dangerous thing." I think old Alex had the first case that we're gonna look at in mind when he made that quote. Before that, let me introduce you to something called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Coined in 1999 by Cornell psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, it is defined as a cognitive bias in which people wrongly overestimate their knowledge or ability in a specific area. So essentially it means that if someone doesn't know very much about a topic, they have a high level of confidence in that topic. But the more they learn in that topic, they realize the less they actually know, and they lower in confidence. But as they continue learning about that subject, their confidence grows yet again. Its true definition and improper usage has been debated online for a long time at this point, but for this video, it means what I say it means. Oh, would you look at that? It's the first case. I almost would have forgotten if they hadn't snuck up on me. It's little Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Johnson, the parents of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Kinda. I'll explain. Whoa, I have adjusted my camera. Hopefully that's okay. So, on January 6, 1995, MacArthur Wheeler and Clifton Earl Johnson robbed two Greater Pittsburgh banks at gunpoint, walking away with a total of $5,200. The two made no attempt to wear a mask, a disguise, or even a change of clothes. Instead, Johnson suggested a much less orthodox means of hiding their face, covering their faces in lemon juice. Despite his initial doubts, Wheeler tested this theory by having Johnson take a picture of him while his face was covered in lemon juice. And to Wheeler's astonishment, he noticed that he wasn't in the photograph at all. With a newfound respect for Johnson's brilliance, the two shared a single brain cell and thought, in unison, lemon juice makes invisible ink appear, does it not? So, what if we cover our faces in lemon juice and rob a bank? Surely the security cameras will not be able to see us because of the lemon juice, no? What a plan. So, after this, the boys were off to test their little science experiment. There were other ways to test this theory, but they decided that breaking the law was probably the best choice. Much to their dismay, however, these lemonheads found out that their hypothesis was incorrect. Wheeler was booked roughly an hour after the Pittsburgh Crime Stopper show aired a segment showing his face in perfect clarity, taken by a security camera at the bank. While in custody, he was shown an image of his face in the bank. He was in complete disbelief. He said, and I quote, "But I wore the lemon juice. I wore the lemon juice." While that is extremely funny, maybe my favorite part of the story is actually about the Polaroid picture. It's theorized that either the film was bad, the camera was bad, or Johnson intentionally swiped the camera as he was taking the picture to make it look like he was invisible. Johnson only served 5 years after testifying against Wheeler. However, Wheeler served 24.5 years, and he got out in 2012. So, as I said earlier, this story was a main source of inspiration for the Dunning-Kruger effect. David Dunning learned about these lemony lawbreakers and decided that he had to take action. Not too many thieves in history have a psychological phenomenon named after them, so I think they should be proud. I don't know how proud. Godspeed to those boys. Let's move on to the next one. Ooh, baby. It isn't warm anymore, it's getting cold. On March 23rd, 2010, a bank in Fairfield, Connecticut received a call from a man who wasn't asking about CD rates or investments. The man chose violence. The man said, and I quote,
"I want $100,000 in large bills and no dye packs. I will be sending someone inside the bank to get the money. Don't call the police. We're monitoring the police scanner. Do you understand? We're not afraid to take hostages and turn the place into a bloodbath."
which for the poor bankers is kind of a lot to deal with at 2:40 on a Tuesday. The banker then went to lock the doors, but only after learning that they were too late in doing so. Another call came in from the same man, this time to explain that he had an accomplice in the building. The call had asked for the supervisor by name. The caller then asked if they could see his associate. This is when the employees knew that the associate was in the building already. The associate then walked up to the counter, placed a briefcase on it, all while the man was still on the phone, and he said, "Don't make a scene, because we will take hostages." The banker then put the money in the briefcase. The young man turns around to leave the building to rendezvous with the man on the phone. Almost exactly when the associate got to the car, police arrived on the scene, and the two surrendered without any fuss. After searching the car, the police found a police scanner, 2 walkie-talkies, and a scheduled to-do list for the robbery. Now, after hearing the whole story laid out like this, it almost seems like it was pretty well thought out, right? Except the initial calls came in before the associate was even in the building. So what these calls effectively did was give the bank plenty of time to give notice to the police. So the calls did very little in terms of intimidation, but it did give the police some prep time. The police at the scene joked that it was nice of the boys to let them know about their intentions before they actually showed up. So who were these guys? The caller was a 27-year-old man named Albert Bailey, and the accomplice was his 16-year-old cousin. Bailey was charged to serve 9 years in prison for second-degree robbery, while less is known about the cousin's sentence due to him being a minor at the time. This next bit, though, is where we can see Albert Bailey's high intellect. This is probably my favorite part of the story. Bailey had just gotten out of another 7-year prison sentence by robbing another bank in Bridgeport by threatening that he had a bomb. So after this first heist, Bailey was immediately arrested outside of the bank, where he was searched, and the police found that he had stuffed an assortment of wires and circuit boards into his pockets, claiming that they were a bomb to intimidate the bank tellers. I love the idea that he didn't think a bomb was going to work again, so he decided to introduce his cousin to domestic terrorism instead. I love it so much. So anyway, that's about it for that story. Let's get on to the next one. We're going to roll along into the next one, because that is what we have to do to keep up. What? On November 1st, 2016, a man was arrested in Albuquerque, New Mexico for robbing a thrift store. So that in itself isn't particularly interesting. I'm sure that happens all the time. What makes this fun, and part of this video, is that the thief, 40-year-old Matthew Crowder, thought he would try his luck at courting the cashier at the thrift store that he robbed. He did this by schmoozing up with the cashier before he left and leaving a business card with his name, phone number, and home address on it. There are cameras inside of the thrift store, so he was pretty easily caught, but what made it easy to track him down is the business card. So what kind of tickles me about this a little bit is that he went on Sir, I'm doing something. I think the feds are coming for me. I think the feds finally found out about me. I think they're landing on my house. Okay. What tickles me is that after he tried to schmooze up to the cashier, he made a post on Facebook that he robbed the place for a specific person. The post read,
"Raided a thrift store today for this necklace. I adore you, Emily. I call her my tipsy gypsy. She's got a lots of cool kitschy gypsy jewelry. Upgrade." That's a difficult thing to read out loud. I implore you to try that. This specific post has been taken down, but less than a year later, he made a similar post about the same thing. About another thrift store that he robbed for a specific woman. Matthew had a bit of a rep with the local law enforcement in this area because he had made multiple posts about stealing things from thrift stores and different kinds of shops, and the law enforcement was pretty well aware of what he was doing. There's a fun quote that I'm going to include here. "We didn't have to call Columbo on this one. Anyone under the age of 35 may not know who Columbo is. All you have to know is that he's a detective in an old show. Go watch it with your parents. Go watch it with your grandpappies." So Matthew is clearly a public menace. And it's very fun that the police just kind of shrug it off a little bit. It doesn't seem like he's hurting anyone. It just seems like he's kind of a goofball. So let's go to the next one. This next case happened on October 23rd, 2009. It was late on a Friday night and police were responding to a call in Carroll, Iowa, about a potential apartment break-in. The caller said there was a pair of men with painted faces trying to hop into a window of an apartment building, but they gave up and drove away in a 90s Buick sedan. It didn't take very long for the police to pull over a vehicle matching that description, and inside, they found 2 men with black marker just covering their face. And, you know, I gotta say, I think it looks great. I think it looks really nice on these boys. Despite the
masks. The boys were identified as 23-year-old Matthew McNelly and 20-year-old Joey Miller. They both were initially charged with second-degree burglary, but ultimately had the charges dropped. The charges were dropped for the boys after a judge 2 weeks later decided that there was insufficient evidence to tie these two boys to a break-in attempt. Neither men had a weapon on them at the time, there wasn't a weapon in the vehicle, and there wasn't any signs of damage on the property. We're going to use this case as a segue to get into a larger segment. That's kind of a lightning round. I didn't go as in-depth about looking into these guys because there wasn't much about them, but I think the cases are still fun, and I think they're worth my time and your time to look at. So to kind of round things off, we're going to be taking a look at a bunch of guys who robbed convenience stores in America. Yeah? They're all in America? Yeah. Just kidding. Just kidding. Erase that. Erase that part. So to start us off, we're going to look at a case that happened on October 11th, 2010. A man in Phoenix, Arizona woke up early to rush into a Circle K convenience store, hoping to get in, get out, and get rich. But he was a frugal man, as he didn't want to spend any money on a disguise. So his solution? He fashioned himself a mask out of a plastic bag. The only problem was that he forgot to cut any holes for him to see or breathe out of this plastic bag. So he throws the bag on his head, he walks up to the clerk, and demands all the money in the register. As the cashier was taking the money out of the register, the man starts to struggle for air, and he rips a hole in the bag, which exposes his face to not only the cameras, but the clerk as well. He then ran away from the scene with cash in hand, and as of October 11th, 2010, had not been caught. The Phoenix New Times dubbed him as the barely breathing bandit. I don't think I can add much to that, so let's get to the next one. So ignore the part where I said that this happens in America, because it doesn't all happen in America. On February 22nd, 2020, in New South Wales, Australia, a man walked into a convenience store with plastic bag on head and finger guns drawn. The man demanded that the cashier hand over any cash that was in the register. While he was doing this, he was angrily pointing his finger at the cashier. So the cashier, naturally, wasn't fazed at all. So the disheartened man lowers his head and walks out the door onto his moped, and then he drives away. I couldn't find what happened after this, but I have to imagine that he was caught. It's a goofy enough thing. I don't even know if you would get in trouble for this, because you essentially just pantomimed a robbery, and then you left on your own accord. So, I don't know. Daily Mail says that he had to appear in court to some capacity, so take that with a spoonful of salt.
On the next one.
On September 2nd, 2018, in Aurora, Colorado, a man struts into an e-cig store. He goes right up to the counter, and as the cashier begins to stand, he pulls out his pistol with such ferocity that he hurls it at the cashier on accident. He then begins to try to hop the counter, but it's way too late as the cashier has already picked up the gun. And he sees this and flees out the door. To make his grand exit, he does a flying kick into the door. Then his shorts fall down. He's forced to try to hold them up as he waddles away. Luckily for the cashier, she was never in any real danger. The gun was a BB gun. I couldn't find if the man was ever caught, but there was a $2,000 reward for finding him. So if that reward is still on the table, and you have an uncle that kind of looks like this guy, he's generic looking enough. I'm not saying to do anything, but I am saying that I wouldn't tattle. No scoundrels. Was. On October 18th, 2021, a man in Florida, Madison, Florida man, a man named Edward William Rodriguez, accompanied by a small dog, entered a Waffle House. He made finger guns, pointed them into the air, and proclaimed, "Get on the ground! Y'all are getting robbed!" And then he admitted that he was high and drunk. And then he sat down at a table, grabbed a bundle of napkins, and then left. He then headed home, which is where police found him. They arrested him and charged him with unarmed robbery and assault. So I love the imagery here because, you know, the previous reenactment sounded a little bit more cowboy, but it was probably closer to like, "Get on the ground, y'all are getting robbed. I'm high and drunk. Yep." And grabs the bundle of napkins and he leaves. I love it. So the confusion from the staff and the other customers might have just been palpable. It might have been thick. On to the next one. So for this next one, if you could imagine, it happened in Florida again. The Florida man strikes back. On October 11th, 2022, a man walked into a Chase bank, held his hand under his shirt like he was holding a gun. He demanded cash from the teller, who then gave him $120, and then the man left. The man was arrested not too far from the bank, and was identified as 56-year-old Paul James Sinclair. Sinclair plainly stated that he used the old finger gun technique, and he never had a real firearm on him. He just wanted to get his GTA stars up a little bit because he was waiting to go on trial for arson. For first-degree arson. Or maybe he was hoping that one crime would cancel the other. I don't know. Let's go on to the next one. the last one that's going to be a part of this little segment here happened on September 28th, 2022. In Honolulu, Hawaii, a man placed a handkerchief over his right hand and made a finger gun. He then entered Dive Oahu, a diving store and gift shop, then attempted to stick up the store with the aforementioned finger gun. The robber demanded that the cashier open the register or I will shoot you. The cashier, logically, believed that he had a gun, but before opening the register, the thief makes a grab at the register key. And then at this point, the cashier notices that he doesn't have a real gun. And then at that point, he knew that she knew. In the video, you can really see the gears turning in this guy's head. He stands there for a second, almost dumbfounded. The man then makes an attempt to swipe her phone away from her, but she's able to grab it back. He decides to get on his moped and drive away, which, funny enough, the moped and the license plate are caught on camera in perfect view, so he was caught. He was caught later that day and charged with second-degree robbery. I think that's really fun, cut, clean, and dry. Silly, but I appreciate it. We're gonna fix our hair a little bit. We're gonna brush it back behind our ears. There are lots of reasons why someone might commit a crime. Maybe it comes from a place of desperation. Maybe it's a lack of impulse control. Or maybe they just wanted to give some content for a YouTube video. Who am I to judge? I'm not a psychologist, so I can't really say why. All I can say though is that learning about them gave me a hoot, and I hope that I presented it in some kind of way that was at least a little bit fun for you to watch as well. I have another video that I'm working on that has to do with pretty much the same thing, but it's about more disturbed individuals. So I hope you'll join me again because I had a lot of fun making this, and it's my first time really doing something like this. In school, we just did PowerPoints, and we never really recorded much, although I wish we did. So thank you for watching. If you're still watching, thank you for watching to this point. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you'll join me for more good times in the future. I sincerely appreciate the time that you spent with me here. Take care.